Morning everyone. My name is Brijender Singh and I'm here for a small discussion on the essay paper that was asked just yesterday in the UPSC mains for 2022. Before I start with the discussion, let me just clarify a couple of things that we're going to do here. Number one, my intention behind making these videos here is first to tell students, of course, what they could have written in the paper, what exactly the paper is about. Number two, more importantly, to help students get rid of some misconceptions that are created around the essay paper and to help students understand how, whether they are sitting at home, whether they're attending classes somewhere, how they can prepare a little better for this paper. Now, if you want to write a good essay, it's a very scoring paper. Getting a score of 120, 130, 140 is comfortably possible in this paper. To do well in the essay paper, there are three things that a student has to be careful about. First and most importantly is that you must have good quality and appropriate content. Second, every student will have to also work upon their expression. Number three, a lot of students have to be, the biggest problem with students when they are preparing for the essay paper is that many of us suffer from what we call a mental block or what we call a writer's block. Now, when it comes to good quality content, in the last couple of years, we've been seeing a lot of topics that are based on philosophical topics. Now, here students have some content, they have an interpretation, they can write that. Beyond 200 or 300 words, students start repeating the same thing over and over again. So the first thing you have to be careful about is that I must have appropriate content, relevant content and a lot of content available. Second, you have to work on your expression. When I go to the classrooms, when I see what students are writing, I realize that some of them have very good thoughts, very good points, very good anecdotes to share. But when you ask them to write it down, most of them are not able to put it down in an effective manner. Second, you need to work on your expression. Third, students do have content. They might even have the right expression. They do not know where to start. When we're writing essays in class, students, in between, they stop. They're looking around here and there. Their problem is not that they don't have the content. They don't know how to write the first sentence of a paragraph. You tell them what the first sentence is. After that, the rest of the paragraph flows very beautifully, very well. But that very first part, the writer's block, that mental block, they're not able to overcome. So in the discussion that we'll have over here, hopefully these three areas we'll try to touch upon and hopefully you'll get a better idea of how to deal with them. But we'll come to that in the course of the discussion. Let me first take a look at some basic questions, some basic queries that students have been asking since yesterday. First and the most common question, what was the level of difficulty of this paper? To be honest with you, the paper was fairly easy. There were one or two topics that can be called a little challenging, which ones we'll come to later. But by and large, the topics were fairly simple. In each of the two sections, there was at least one, if not two topics on which a student who's prepared a little bit can write very comfortably. At worst, I would say, even if you don't agree with easy, at most I can say it was a moderate level difficulty and much easier than what we saw last year in 2021. In 2021, the topics were not only unexpected, the pattern was not only unexpected, even the language was very difficult. In 2021, everyone expected that one section would be reflective, philosophical essays, and one section would be some other essays, economic issues, women-related issues, science and tech. First surprise for the students was that all 8 were based only on philosophical topics. Second, the language was very dense. When I say the real is rational and the rational is real, when I use words like utopia, chimera, wantlessness, many students immediately, especially when you're sitting in the exam hall, immediately got shocked and got very scared. This year, in contrast, these 8 topics, they were very simple, they were very straightforward. At least understanding the topic was not a challenge. Second question that students have right now, are reflective topics, are philosophical essays going to be a staple part of the essay paper for the next few years? And the answer, without hesitation, is yes. From the looks of it, it seems that at least for the next few years, even if they cut down, for example, last year in 2021, all 8 topics were reflective. This year, about 6 of the topics were reflective, 2 of the topics were not completely philosophical in nature. In the coming years, maybe this number of 2 goes up to 3. Maybe it goes back up to 4. We're not sure about that. But one thing we are certain about is that in the coming few years, reflective and philosophical essays will account for a large part of the essay paper. In the worst of circumstances also, at least one such essay you will have to write in the paper. Now, in this paper yesterday, what is a reasonable score to expect? If you are in the top 10 percentile of candidates, if you're in the top 10%, a very average score to expect would be somewhere between 125 to 140. If you interpret it correctly, if you wrote well, the score of 140 can go up to 150 also, maybe even 155. If your essay, one of your essays was not really up to the mark, this 125 may come down to 120. But in the top 10 percentile, from where you will get your good ranks, a score of 125 to 140 was comfortably possible to expect. Now, there might be students over here who have not written the mains this year, or who might expect to have to write the mains again next year. Here the question is, for such kind of essays, for this kind of a paper, how can I prepare? And what I was saying earlier also, 3 things. Number 1, please collect relevant content. I've seen a lot of videos that have been put up on YouTube in the past, very recently also, where everyone explains their interpretation of the topic, where they tell you that, this is what the topic seems to be saying. Nobody makes the effort of explaining what I should write in the essay. I know what the topic is about, I understand it correctly. And then they say that you can write an essay very easily, you can borrow from so-and-so optional, you can borrow from so-and-so book. But sitting inside the exam hall, my concern is I have to fill up 1200 words of sensible content. And sitting there, I don't have the ability to generate examples, to generate thoughts. Therefore, when you are at home, collect relevant content that is relevant to the paper. Number 2, very importantly, please practice on a regular basis. Many students who give their prelims, pass their prelims, when they come here, they say, if you ask them how many essays have you practiced so far, and the mains are about 2.5 months away, their answer is 2, their answer is 3, upper limit 5. But if you've written just 5 essays in the course of your entire preparation, for 1, for 2, for 3 years, there's a very high probability that in that very short span of time, you will not be able to do justice to this paper. Essay is very easy, again, is very scoring, if you have the right strategy. And a vital part of the strategy is that you start writing as regularly as you can. Let's say 1 essay in a week would be more than enough. But these essays, number 3, please ensure that they are evaluated and you understand how you can improve in them. Just because you are writing something, see, when I write an essay, writing an essay will take me somewhere between 1 hour 15 minutes to, let's say, 1 hour 20 minutes. When I've spent 70 to 80 minutes writing something on a piece of paper, my first instinct is to justify what I've written. And I justify it first in my mind. Even if I've written something that is digressing from the topic, even if I've written something that is substandard, in my mind, I find a justification and I say that no, this is relevant, this is sensible, this should fetch me marks. Unfortunately, when another person reads the same essay, especially when an evaluator is reading 25 essays in a day, one of which is yours, if it is not appropriate, if it is not relevant, if it is not focused, he is not going to give you marks. This is not, what we are discussing here is not an exercise in essay writing. This is ultimately an exercise about getting marks, clearing a competitive exam and getting a government job. Therefore, practice writing regularly, but get your essays evaluated and learn how and what you need to do to improve in your writing. Now, this is for the paper in general. More specifically, students will also have questions, and here is where they have a lot of misconceptions regarding reflective essays. First and the most common misconception, and a question that I've started getting with increasing frequency in recent weeks. If I want to do well in reflective essays in the essay paper also, which optional would be the most useful? In this industry, there's a lot of false narrative that is being created that there are certain options that are more useful, that are more helpful in the essay paper. Unfortunately, that is not correct. The essay number 1 is not a specialist, it is a generalist exercise, which means that the more jargon you use, the more technical terms you use in your essay, the higher the likelihood that your marks are going to drop. If I look at students who've written essays in the past, students who write on a topic which is very close to the optional, after writing about the first half of the essay, either go too deep into the essay, too deep into the technicalities, or they completely digress from the topic. They get so absorbed in explaining what they know that they forget that they're not doing justice to the topic. Number two, a lot of people now, why is there a narrative created around this? Because a lot of people, the option that they're taking or the option that they're teaching will try to tell you that this is an option that is very useful for the essay paper. If, for example, if I teach philosophy, I'll say that all the philosophy topics you can answer very easily, very comfortably by looking at some thinkers. Socrates would be very useful. Marx would be very useful. That's correct. But I can use a Greek thinker for one paragraph. What do I write in the rest of the essay? Therefore, no, there is no topic, there's no optional in particular which will help you here. What will be of help and what has a very strong overlap with the essay paper is the ethics paper. We cannot say that it is completely the same, but to a large extent there's an overlap between the two, where your preparation for the essay helps you with ethics and where your preparation for ethics helps you in the essay paper. Second, students ask, what will make a reflective essay good? If I want to write a good, a powerful, and impactful essay, what will make my essay good? Three things you have to be careful about. Number one is symbolism. What do you mean by symbolism? That when these topics are given to you, for example, if I say joy is the simplest form of gratitude, I don't expect you to write 1,000 words just explaining what joy is and what gratitude is. I expect you to relate it with what happens in human life, what happens in human existence. Not only for an individual, for a family, for a society, for an institution, or even for a nation. The more you're able to understand, capture, and express that symbolism, the better your essay becomes, the better, of course, are your marks. Number two, a reflective essay will reward lateral thinking. That's why I said that optionals will not necessarily help you. Because from an optional, you will have one line of thinking, one train of thought. But if you can think laterally, if you can relate the same topic with different areas, different dimensions, different perspectives, your essay becomes richer in quality. And third, of course, the same lateral thinking will also help you in adding diversity. The more the perspectives, the more the dimensions you're using in your essay, the better the essay becomes. Third, and a very legitimate question from students, should I now prepare exclusively only for reflective essays? Answer is no. As I was saying earlier also, this year, out of 8 topics, 6 were reflective, but 2, strictly speaking, were not. What are the other themes that I can prepare for in the essay paper? You can prepare for women-related topics. You can prepare on poverty. You can prepare on education, healthcare, media, science and tech. Now, when you prepare for these topics, they give you a lot of content. They add a lot of lateral thinking in your thought process. Only thing that is needed over here is that you must learn how to develop linkages between different areas, different themes, and the topics that are given over here. The higher that, or the better, the stronger that linkage, the higher will be your marks here. Keeping this in mind and to understand how you do this in your actual writing, let me also take a look at the paper that was asked this year. This is the 2022 essay paper, 4 topics in section A, another 4 in section B. And as I was saying earlier, in both the topics, in both the sections, there are some topics that are very simple, that are very easy. All 8 of them we'll discuss in the course of our discussion here. But first I want you to understand that when you're writing a paper, you're not here to prove a point. You're not here to prove that you can tackle the most difficult of essays. You are here only to get marks. So first thing that you should understand is that your choice of the topic should be correct. If I look at the first 4 topics, for example, it says forests are the best case studies for economic excellence, poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world, history is a series of victory won by the scientific man over the romantic man, and a ship in harbour is safe, but that is not what a ship is for. Given my experience with the students, I am fairly confident in saying that most students would find topic number 4 very easy. Most students would find topic number 1 a little challenging to write upon. But as long as you find one topic that is simple, the first section is taken care of. How you write, we'll discuss after some time. Similarly, from section 2, again there were 4 topics that is given over here, and here a lot of students will find point number 5, essay number 5 or essay number 8 very easy to write upon. Some students may choose 6 and 7 also. Even they are not difficult, they are moderate. But choose a topic if and only if you believe you are comfortable with understanding it, comfortable with content, and will be able to do justice when you're writing. Now, keeping this in mind, let me also take a look at what exactly, if any of these topics we're writing on, what exactly would a good essay entail? What are the elements in a good essay which gets me marks? 5 things that a student should focus on, and here I'm assuming that a person watching this video might be sitting at home, might not be attending any classes, and might be trying to prepare only on their own. Even if you're preparing on their own, in a good essay, just 5 things you have to focus on. Number 1, and most importantly, your interpretation of the topic must be correct. In writing an essay, if your interpretation is not correct, your essay will not only digress from the topic, will not only digress from what is expected, sometimes it could be completely the opposite of what was expected. In interpreting the topic, your interpretation should not be radical, your interpretation should not be controversial, and your interpretation should not be partial. There are some students who acquire this sort of arrogance that when they're writing an essay, they want to prove that they're different from the others. You can prove that you're different from the others by virtue or on the basis of your content, on the basis of your writing, on the basis of your language, on the basis of your grammar, but not on the basis of your interpretation. The more universal, the more general is your interpretation, the higher the chances that the interpretation will be considered correct. Number 2, throughout the course of your essay, throughout your 1200 words, maintain fidelity to the topic, maintain loyalty to the topic. How do you do that? By repeatedly reinforcing the topic. The more you can reinforce the topic, the more you can bring the discussion back to emphasizing what the topic was talking about, the better is your essay, and again, the better would be your marks. Number 3, in a good essay, we must always have diversity in thoughts, diversity in perspectives. Again, students who don't prepare, a very big mistake that students make is that they think again that since I'm preparing for general studies, since I'm reading my newspapers, I have a lot of content available to me. In the exam hall, the same content, one way or the other, I'll be able to remember, I'll be able to write, and my essay will take the desired shape. What they don't realize is that in the stress of an exam hall, under the pressure of the exam conditions, we usually remember 2 or 3 good points, 2 or 3 good examples, but beyond that, we start repeating ourselves. For a good essay, it is very important that you have diversity. And how do you ensure that diversity? What we were saying earlier also, in your notes, in your preparation, collect content that is relevant, and collect content from different backgrounds, different domains, different perspectives. Number 4, a good essay should have examples, should have data, should have facts. In an essay, we give our interpretation of the topic. We explain what we think, what we feel about the topic. But nobody cares about your interpretation, nobody cares about your thoughts unless you can substantiate your thoughts. You might say that it is very important for a person to be virtuous. It is very important for a person to be courageous. But when have you seen a courageous person being appreciated? For that, please give us one example. Please give us one anecdote. Please give us one data. The moment you can do that, this now adds a lot of credibility, a lot of value to your interpretation. 5th, and most importantly for reflective essays especially, essay paper in general and reflective essays especially, you must have an orientation that is optimistic and that is prescriptive. You cannot afford to become negative. You cannot afford to criticize. You must remain positive. You must remain optimistic. And where we believe that there are problems, where we believe that we're facing severe challenges, there you must give us some prescriptions. If there are problems that we're facing in the world, how can these problems be overcome? You cannot step into the same river twice. Agreed, accepted. But if there are people who need to step into the same river twice, what that means, we'll discuss when we come to the topic. But if I need to step into it twice, how can this be avoided, or how can this be successfully handled? The prescriptions, the suggestions will add again a lot of value to your essay. 5 basic elements that you seek in your essay. Number 1, correct interpretation. Number 2, focus on the topic. Number 3, diversity. Number 4, examples and data anecdotes. And number 5, optimism, and along with that, suggestions and prescriptions. With this in mind now, without much delay, let me also see how we'll write the answers over here, how we'll write the essays over here. At Vajiram, we follow a simple 8-paragraph essay, 4 basic points that we focus on. We tell the students, and those of you who are here in the batch would understand this fairly easily. We simply divide the essay into 4 parts: the introduction, body paragraph number 1, body paragraph 2 to 6, and finally the conclusion. In total, this gives you a total of 8 paragraphs. The word limit for an essay is 1200 words, which means each paragraph on average will be about 150 words. 150 words is a very small piece of writing, but in that small paragraph that you're writing, it's very easy to distinguish between your thought and your example, to establish a clear structure of what you want to say, connect it to the example, conclude your paragraph, and move to the next part. Now, in each of these parts, each of these 4 points, there's a certain, what should I call it? There's a certain purpose that you're trying to achieve. In the introduction, for example, what is your objective? To provide a preview of your essay, to help the examiner understand what exactly is your interpretation of the topic, and to create interest, to generate impact when they read it. Now, again, students come to me and they give me all sorts of, what should I say? They give me all sorts of jargon that they think that they should write in the essay. Should I write a thesis statement? Should I create an antithesis? Should I create a climax? Nothing of that sort. This is not an overly technical exercise. It's a very simple exercise. Intention over here is only to get marks by explaining the topic well. How you write the introduction, I'll explain to you again in some time. Second, and this is the most important part for you, you must convey your interpretation of the topic, which you do in body paragraph number 1. After that, add 5 paragraphs. In each paragraph, present different perspectives, different dimensions, different thoughts, diverse thoughts on how you interpret the topic. And finally, one last paragraph, your conclusion, to give a final reinforcement of the topic. What we said earlier also, maintain fidelity on the topic, ensure that the topic is repeatedly reinforced. So one final reinforcement in the conclusion. And to understand how you write this, again the same 8 paragraphs, let me take up one topic that was asked in the essay paper this year. Very simple and a very good statement. A ship in harbour is safe, but that is not what ships are for. This is in fact one of my favorite, I would say, quotes. And the original quote says that a ship in harbour is safe, but that is not what ships are built for. Now, when you get a topic, the first thing that you're supposed to do is to interpret it correctly. Now, how do you interpret it? And those of you who are in the classes, I hope you are solving this sitting at home on your own. And if you're doing that, then 3 small questions that you frame yourself here to interpret the topic. A ship in harbour is safe, but that is not what ships are for. How do I interpret it? First question I ask myself is, when we say a ship in harbour, what does this signify? A ship in harbour signifies an individual, signifies an institution, a family, or even a nation that is not being exposed to any challenges, that is not being exposed to any difficulties. Is it important to be exposed to challenges and difficulties? Answer is yes. Because without facing adversities, without facing challenges, we will never realize our true potential. We will never be able to find out whether or not we can achieve our true purpose in life. A ship in harbour, a ship is not built to stay inside the harbour. It is supposed to take journeys. It is supposed to sail in the seas. Similarly, an individual, a family, a nation is not supposed to keep itself protected. It is supposed to go out and realize the best that it is capable of. Second point in my interpretation would be, what are ships built for? Now, if I look at it in a very direct sense, in a very literal sense, then ships are built to enable our progress. They're built to weather storms. They help us reach our destinations. But that is literally only for a ship. More importantly for us, what does this mean? That they are built to help us scale new heights. They are built to help us explore new dimensions. They're built to help us explore different aspects of life and hopefully with every aspect improve, find out more about ourselves and keep improving. Number 3, why are ships not built to stay in the harbor? Because if we stay in the harbor, literally again, we will never reach our destination. And more importantly, for an individual or for a nation, we will never realize what we are truly capable of achieving. Anything magnificent, anything worthwhile that you want to achieve, you will have to step out of your comfort zone, you will have to face challenges, and you will have to become the very best that you're capable of. This is my interpretation, and this interpretation, where will I write it? I will write it in body paragraph number 1, in plain simple language, within hopefully about 150 words. This I'll write over there. But this comes in the first body paragraph. What do I write in my introduction? What do I write in my conclusion? Now, before I explain any of these anecdotes, any of these examples here, a simple thing that we teach the students is that when you want to when you want to reinforce the topic, when you want to add emphasis upon the topic, how do you do that? In your introduction, in your conclusion, don't get into jargon, don't get into any technicalities, keep one simple approach. Start the introduction and the conclusion by sharing a good anecdote, appropriate, relevant anecdote. And number 2, end your paragraph by quoting or by stating the topic itself. Very simple approach, very simple strategy. But if you follow this, the rest of your essay, the rest of your paragraph at least, will flow very smoothly. For example, the topic over here is that a ship in harbour is safe, but that is not what ships are for. In simple words, we are trying to say that you must be willing to face challenges, you must be willing to face adversities. Now, whose example can I write over here? A person like Gautam Buddha. When Siddhartha was born as a prince, Siddhartha understood, or Siddhartha rather lived a life of utter luxury, complete luxury. He was very comfortable, he was not exposed to any sorrow, he was not exposed to any hardships, he had a very comfortable life. But then, in a short span of time, the Prince Siddhartha is exposed to a person who is unwell, a person who is aged, a person who is ill, and a person, I finally, for the first time, sees a dead body. Now, Siddhartha has a clear choice. He can stay in the harbour. What do you mean by harbour? That he can live a comfortable life. He can keep living the very comfortable, very safe life of a prince. Or the second option, that is not what a ship is built for. Second option is to go out and explore the world and find out what is the cause of all this suffering. The one ultimate truth for every human being is that all of us are going to die. Some soon, some later, but all of us are going to die. Then why are we suffering so much? That ultimate truth we cannot change. Who discovers this for us? That is a person called Buddha. And when he finds enlightenment, that is the purpose of his life. Similarly, whose example, and that's why I say, or that's why we say, that a ship in harbour may be safe, but that is not what ships are for. These people were not built to become princes. These people were born to help us realize the larger purpose, the larger meaning of life. Similarly, another example that we can quote here, and very prominent example, is this lady called Chanda Zaveri. Chanda Zaveri was 17 years old when she left her house in Calcutta. Why did she leave her house in Calcutta? She came from a prominent business family. At the age of 17, her family wanted her to get married. Chanda did not want to get married. She wanted to pursue an education and she wanted to work. So what does Chanda Zaveri do? At the age of 17, with only a pair of diamond earrings that she was wearing, she leaves her house. She sells the diamond earrings to get a flight ticket and flies to the US. When she lands in the US, she starts working as a domestic help in different people's homes. From there, collects some money, gets some assistance from these people, and enrolls herself in a university called Harvard, one of the best in the world. Studies at Harvard. In the course of her education at Harvard and other institutes, she comes into contact with a Nobel Prize winner called Linus Pauling. Under Linus Pauling, she starts understanding how basic compounds around us can be used, or can be leveraged to create cosmetic products. Based upon her learnings there, and of course, Linus Pauling, nobody can question, she starts her own company, and that company today, cosmetic company today, is worth 800 crore rupees. Now, the day her parents told her at that tender age of 17 that we are planning to get you married off, Chanda Zaveri had two options. She could stay in the harbour, get married where her parents are telling her, enjoy her parents' support and affection, and live a comfortable life that many people, millions of people, would be more than content with. But that is not what ships are built for. What are ships built for? To explore, to find out what are these individuals born for, to find out the very best that they're capable of achieving. That is why, what do I do? At the end, I just write the topic again. One more example, let me take over here. Let's say a person called Baba. Okay, Baba, not Baba Amte, that everyone knows about. Let me take one final example here, which is Marwan Attapattu. In class, when a student tells me that, sir, something is difficult, students usually they don't tell you problems. They try to give you excuses. One person says that, sir, I'm attending 2 classes a day. I don't have time to study. Another person says that, sir, the daily newspaper is taking me 3 hours. How do I manage? Another person, some problem or the other. These are not actually problems. These are excuses because everyone is facing the same problems. And if everyone is facing the same problem, the only person who will succeed is the person who can overcome these problems. When students speak to me in this manner, I always give them the example of Marwan Attapattu. Now, Marwan Attapattu, for those who don't know him by the way, is a Sri Lankan cricketer. When Marwan Attapattu was invited to the Sri Lankan test team to play test cricket for his country, in his first match, he made 0 in the first innings, 0 in the second innings. Now, with 2 double zeros, they will not let you stay in the team, so they asked him to go back. He went and played first class country cricket. A few years, I think about 2 years later, he was called again to play for Sri Lanka. This time, what did he make? This time, he made 0 and 1. Again, he was dropped. Came back again after 2 years. 2 years played first class cricket, worked very hard, came back. This time, and that's the surprising part, this time made 0 and 0. Again was sent back. Again practiced at first class cricket. Then came back. And this fourth time that he came back, he did not stop. He went on to play cricket for Sri Lanka, one-day cricket, test cricket, made, if I remember correctly, I think 6 double centuries, 11 centuries, and became the captain of the Sri Lankan test team. Now, the first time that he made, and look at the score, 0-0, 0-1, 0-0, the kind of score that is unbelievable. Now, here, this person can stay safe in the harbour. How does he stay safe in the harbour? Admit to yourself or acknowledge for yourself that I cannot play for my country. I will only remain, for example, in India, I will only remain a Ranji player. I'll only play county cricket. I'll only play first class cricket. But that is not what ships are built for. You are built or you are born, you are created to realize the truest potential that you're capable of realizing. And so on and so forth. Baba Amte, everyone knows about. Abhimanyu from the Mahabharata, everyone knows about. There was no reason why he should have gone into the Chakravyuh. But that is not what warriors are built for. That is not what ships are built for. You are there to do the best that you are capable of achieving. Now, this is what you can write in the introduction or in the conclusion. What you write in body paragraph number 1, we had looked at earlier. But in 8 paragraphs, 5 paragraphs are to be based upon your body paragraphs. Now, in the body paragraphs, again, a lot of discussion that I've been viewing, everyone gives the interpretation of the topic. But nobody seems to be able to tell us what do we write inside that essay. I have 1200 words to fill. What 1200 sensible words can I write there? And of course, I need diversity. Of course, I need sensible content. Now here what do you write? A ship in harbour is safe, but that is not what ships are built for. So the first thing that I say, how is a ship in harbour? A ship is in harbour because many people, many countries suffer from a pessimism bias. What is a pessimism bias? That we overestimate the chances of something wrong, something negative happening to us. Every time we have to do something, instead of trying to do the right thing, we only overestimate that if I try to do this, I might not succeed. Failure is imminent. Now here, when you have a pessimism bias, that is the ship in harbour. What is the ship built for? To actually go out, to venture into the seas. And here, what does the Gita tell you? The Gita tell you that you don't worry about whether. What is pessimism bias? The fear of failure. Now here the Gita tells you that you don't worry about success or failure. You focus on your efforts. Your focus should not be on the results. Your focus should be on the efforts. And here whose example will you give? Give the example of your own country immediately after independence. After independence, India wanted to stay inside the harbour, at least on an economic ground. What do you mean by economic ground? That for the first few decades, we followed a policy of import substitution. We tried to protect our domestic industries. We created artificial trade barriers, artificial restrictions, because of which or through which we tried to protect our own domestic industries. What does this lead to? In the first few years, and this is what we remember with a little bit of, what should I call it, little bit of embarrassment, this is what gave us the Hindu rate of growth. Our economy was just not picking up. Then, in the early 90s, India decides to step outside of the harbour. India decides to introduce economic reforms. And the moment we introduce the economic reforms, instantly we witness a surge in our economic growth. And today, we have ambitions of becoming a $5 trillion economy. Had India stayed in that harbour, we would have never been able to even have these kind of dreams. That is why we say that you might be safe in the harbour. Your domestic industry might be safe with import substitution, but that is not what ships, that is not what economies, that is not what nations are built for. Second, what do you mean by a ship in the harbour? That many of us, again, try to keep ourselves safe by what we call or through what we call a bystander effect. What is a bystander effect? That many of us do not do the right thing merely because others around us are not doing the right thing. We follow others blindly. If a lot of people, in other words, this can also be called the herd mentality. Whatever other people are doing, that's the same thing I'm going to do. On a busy, crowded road, a person has met with an accident. Hundreds of people are crossing by, dozens of vehicles are crossing by, but nobody is helping that accident victim. Bystander effect means that I'll say that if others are not helping, neither should I. But that is not what you're built for. That is not what you're born for. So here, how do you step out of the harbour? By realizing interdependence. What do you mean by realizing interdependence? In ethics, for example, the same thing here, we would have said the categorical imperative. That if the situation was reversed, if you were the victim and someone else was going, what would you expect that person to do? And now I understand very easily, I would expect that person to stop and help me out. What you expect from others is exactly what is expected of you. Therefore, don't stay in the harbour, do what you are built for, be compassionate, be empathetic, and be helpful towards others. And whose example will you give here? Very famous example to quote is a man called Oscar Schindler. I'm sure many of you must have watched that movie, what is that called? Schindler's List, which won the Oscar also, if I remember correctly. Oscar Schindler was this German living in Germany during the Second World War. Single-handedly, he was able to save the lives of 1,200 Jews by smuggling them out of Germany. He liquidated his entire fortune, he was very prosperous, liquidated his entire fortune to ensure that these 1,200 people were able to escape Germany, escape the Nazis. Why? Because the ship Schindler had that option of remaining safe. He could have said that nobody else is helping the Jews. Why should I? Why should I risk my life? Why should I risk my fortune? But that is not what ships are built for. Third, again, what do you mean by ship in harbour? That many people suffer from what we call the ostrich effect. What is the ostrich effect? We realize that what is happening around us is certainly not right. We realize that circumstances around us are definitely disturbing. Something is definitely wrong, and yet we choose to ignore it. We remain in our comfort zone. Here, how do you step out of the harbour? By creating SMART goals. What are SMART goals? Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. For example, Chanda Zaveri. When Chanda Zaveri, the example we were looking at a little while back, when Chanda Zaveri leaves her house, she knows exactly what her plan is going to be. She could have remained oblivious. She could have stayed in the harbour by saying that I don't care about what is happening. I'm comfortable with my life. Whatever my parents are telling me, that's the same thing that we will do. But what did she choose to do? She created a very clear strategy, a very clear roadmap for herself. That number one, I have to leave the country. Number two, I have to pursue my education. Number three, I have to leverage, I have to use my education to create a successful business enterprise. Why? Because a ship in harbour may be safe. In Calcutta, she would have had a comfortable, safe life. But that is not what ships are built for. Now, as I'm going along with the discussion, those of you who had attended the classes, if you're watching this, I hope that you did not write only about these, you added different perspectives. For example, here the perspective that you could have added, and again from your notes itself, all that I'm discussing here for your benefit I have not taken a single point from outside the notes. Because otherwise you people write to me and you say, that's a so-and-so example you did not take from there, so-and-so example was not in the notes. All of these are given over there to help you understand or to reinforce for you the very simple fact that this is something, these are essays you could have written very comfortably. And I'm sure you must have also. How do you add diversity? Now here we are talking about individuals, we are talking about nations. Let me also talk about the bond between a parent and a child. How do you stay in the harbor? Lot of parents and many parents in India also have this one very bad habit, which is called helicopter parenting. What is helicopter parenting? Taking an excessive and unnecessary interest in your child's life and going out of the way to protect your child from the challenges and the dangers that he or she might face. Excessively interfering in the child's life, literally giving them no independence at all. Now, what is that called? That is called keeping the child or the ship in the harbor, keeping your child safe. But you must understand the child will grow up. The child will have to become independent. The child will go away from you sometime. Therefore, it is very important that instead of this helicopter parenting, you teach children how to fight their own battles. A parent is not supposed to be a replacement for a child. A parent is supposed to be an enabler, a facilitator for a child. You should teach the children how to fight their own battles. And here the example you can quote is that of Thomas Edison. Edison was a small child when his mother got a letter from his school telling the mother that Edison was mentally adult, mentally deficient, and she would have to remove him from the school and send him to a school for the specially abled. This letter, if she wanted, she could have showed to Edison very easily, but she hid it. She hid it, homeschooled him, ensured that he completed his education. Many years later, when Thomas Edison read that letter, he was surprised and he was shocked because he realized that whatever he had become, and by the way, he's one of the greatest inventors of the 20th century. Edison realized that everything that he had achieved was largely because of his mother. Had his mother showed him that original letter, he might have never had confidence in himself or his abilities. Now, for his mother, she could have kept him very safely in the harbor, admitting to herself that her child was not going to achieve anything significant, anything great. But that is not what children are born for. That is not what ships are built for. Ships are not built to stay in the harbor. They are built to actually explore the maximum that they can. One more paragraph if we want to write. We will say that many people, how do they stay in the harbor? By never exploring, never stepping out of their comfort zone, by never exploring their potential. Many people complain of what is called learned helplessness. What is learned helplessness? That if we face an uncomfortable or a difficult situation once, any time in the future when we face a similar circumstance or a similar situation, our first instinct is to try and get away from it, is to try and escape from it. But here that is being in the harbor. That the moment you tell me something challenging, my first instinct is to believe that this is something I will not be able to successfully deal with. I've already given up. But that is not what a ship is built for. So here, how do you step out of the harbor? By cultivating what we call learned optimism. What is learned optimism? The very simple understanding that if you faced an uncomfortable or a difficult situation in the past, there must have been something you did to overcome that. When you overcame that, maybe successfully, maybe partially successfully, there must have been some learnings. From those learnings, cultivate a degree of optimism and prepare yourself better, improve yourself better to face similar challenges even in the future. And here, a very good example again to give is this lady called J.K. Rowling. In 1993-1994, she was a single mother with a small child and she was living on support, on government support. She literally did not have money for herself. She did not know where the future was going. She wrote the same. What is she famous for? The Harry Potter books, of course. She submitted the same Harry Potter manuscript to dozens of publishers. But one publisher after the other turned it back. Now, J.K. Rowling, how does she stay in the harbor? By saying that this manuscript is not going to be accepted. Every publisher is going to give me the same rejection. And she can always say over there that now there is nothing I can do. But with every single encounter that she was having, there was something that she was learning, which kept her hopes up, which kept her faith up. Till finally, a publisher called Bloomsbury accepted the manuscript, and the rest, as we always say, is history. Why? Because a ship in harbor may be safe, but that is not what ships are built for. The point that we're trying to make over here is that there's nothing difficult in these essays, absolutely nothing, if you have the right approach, if you have the right strategy. And for the right strategy, again, three things I will repeat over here. Number one, please collect relevant content. Number two, practice writing on a regular basis, at least 1 or 2 essays in a month. Number three, as far as possible, try to get your essays evaluated. Based upon the evaluation, understand where you might be going wrong and what you can do to improve that. This is where we'll take a pause for today, and beyond this then, the next topic we'll discuss later. Thank you.